said, we don't have to. They said the right have used constitutional amendments for the last 20 years as bargaining chips.
Mm-hmm.
The federal marriage amendment got them DOMA. The balanced budget amendment got them the terrible tax deal, that we had to sign. Even thinking back to liberals, the Equal Rights Amendment probably played a role in the Supreme Court in greater protection of gender rights, gender equality. None of those constitutional amendments passed, but they created an enormous amount of political leverage to get better deals. So some things that we might think about, certainly the system is corrupted by moneyed interests having too much power in politics, so why don't we talk about, and Ted Deutsch just proposed this occupied amendment to suggest actually overturning Citizens United by constitutional amendment and say, let's not let corporations spend money on political arena. To Fred, I think, to your point, liberals in the early 70s tried to get the Supreme Court to acknowledge that there's a right to an adequate education in the Constitution and that poor populations should have certain protected rights that courts would look at. Why don't we start pushing for those things again as constitutional amendments? And we may not win them, but we may force the system as it exists to the bargaining table, just as the right's been able to do with things like gay marriage and balanced budget. So I think there are ways to play inside and outside the system, and I think it's worth us exploring. I think there are some inside the system ways to create some leverage on our side and to people support these ideas.
There's a phrase that's been reverberating for me that is key. That race has always been used to break up movements. And the thing that's scary is that, in a sense, I see it happening at this table. I don't know, race/class, but as much as I'm enthusiastic about your issues, the essential point is on both sides. One, there are hundreds and thousands of blacks in this movement that if it were being run for its purpose, they should be. And the second, the very good reason is that we're not addressing the issues. Schools. Absolute key to dig back into the 60s. There was a boycott of schools. And that hurts because the schools depend on state money to run. If kids aren't in school, they don't get money for each day the kid isn't in school. The reason it didn't work the first go-round, and this goes back to the first point, is because the good white liberals got so upset at the disorder that they came out against the boycott. So it means if you're going to work on community issues, in fact, if you want to make, there are two ways to expand this. There's expanding it to the sedentary middle white. It's also expanding it to the black, Latino, poor. Now those are two organizing jobs, and they are separate. If, in fact, you want numbers from the poor people who you are supposedly representing, then you got to think about what matters to them, what's in it for them, and start focusing on those kinds of issues that matter, whether it's police brutality, which you're beginning to see a little of, or whether it's schools, or whether it's the stop and frisk stuff going on, healthcare, that there's a potential here if we don't divide at this table over the racial issues. And all I'm saying is that race is a key in this.
I think that he should have a last thing to say, but I don't know, because we do not necessarily want to cut off the discussion, but it's 1:30.
Just one very quick comment.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Let's collect all those things, and then you certainly will have your last thing.
Just very quickly, just factually about the migrant situation. The fact of the matter is that there are many, many more people of color and minorities who are being underwater forces because they were targeted. And so it's not that and similarly, just as a teacher, I talk to the students of color who come to my, and they are groaning under these laws they have. So no, it's
there's a world out there.
I agree. So I'm just saying that first. And secondly, I agree with you completely. And you don't just do one thing. If, for example, you've got 1 million people who signed the thing, you've got 1 million addresses of people who could potentially be open to other things. The signatures just takes half a second. But you're building a movement, but then you can help them see things in neighborhoods and so on. So
Right, let me just rephrase that. Maybe it's not simply, well, it is raising class, but it's also urban. In urban cities, you're not dealing with homes, you're dealing with all kinds of other problems. And I'm saying that there's a potential strength in urban areas if you focus on the ghetto schools and all the other things that come with it.
There is a possibility that that kind of renegotiation, that kind of a new contract, new American kind of contract could happen, because from what all you said, and from all we know, in fact, it's not just we who are in crisis, but actually everybody's in crisis, including the potential people who would sit with us at the table. But to this table, all those issues should be brought. The agenda should be, and only when both sides are weak. And I think we are in that situation. That, you know, the movement, yes, we have, but we have to go somewhere, but then they don't have solutions. And we have to pass on them our anxieties, so there could be a realization that we are in all of that together. So I think that, and yes, and the agenda ought to be thicker. But I think it's good to start with things that we know how to do.
Can we just add one thing to it, add another thing that includes more? You have student loans, you have mortgages, let's think of another thing.
Well, that's saying that, but beyond that, in terms of, I mean, I'm just using this as a model of a way of thinking. So let's think of a way of thinking about schools, for example. Obviously, the issue there is poverty caps. That education is poverty caps based, and until that gets broken, you know, how can you get around that?
Which other wealthy community can perhaps share its tax income on you?
Could add to that list, as of October 15th, we are going to boycott all the schools.
Well, is it possible to think even larger in terms of a national strike? And if you want to go there, go all the way. And try for that one. And if I can, I'll add one thing I was thinking about. Also, in terms of this contract with America, of course, it really has an awful sound to those of us who live through.
No, America's contract, I changed it.
Okay, but is there an opportunity to employ that in terms of trying to break into the system that way to get people to sign that pledge, just the way people who signed the Northwest or the contract pledge? And is it possible that we're ready for a third-party movement?
I tell you what, I think, okay, go ahead.
But the third-party
Yeah,
movement coalesces around the constitutional amendment ideas. It allows it to allow people to not even change. I don't know.
Could you say that? It allows it to be corrupted.
Right. If I just say something really small, in most of these urban communities, you're gonna get different answers about what's the pressing issue or the top issue from depending on the frame. If you talk, for instance, to the leaders, quote unquote, the mayors and the people that are in charge, they'll say housing because they'll cite blighting issues in the community doesn't look good, have all these houses that are abandoned and these are havens for this and for that. If you talk to a student of color who's in college, then it's student loans because they're currently afflicted with it. It's the current reality. But all those lies on the fringe, the students of color that are in school and the leadership, the broad base of the people that are in urban communities, the issues, to me it's a chicken and egg scenario, but it's schools. Because those, to me, are fundamentally the way you empower people. You build up the critical mass of able people to fight their own affliction, to articulate their own suffering, right? So it's not always the sense that they have to go get a established coalition of people to, and listen, ACLU, this is what I'm going through, see what you can do for me, or listen here and here, this and that. No, because they go through schools that are decent, go to college, and then they learn and they understand these concepts. They wouldn't understand the sociological concepts we've been bouncing around here is so far down. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm going to work and I'm paying my mortgage. I'm going to work and I'm paying my mortgage. My kids have a need a place to stay. My kids need a place to sleep. And but so what I'm saying is that you need to build the critical mass of people from all communities that are able to fight for themselves and kind of correlate with other groups as well. And to me, fundamentally, that is education. That's how I see it.
The troublemaker in chief, as it was, as a plot.
Well, this has been a terrific discussion, and, you know, it reveals, as happens every time you start talking about tactics, how complex the issues are and how so many issues are interrelated. So, for a moment, let's back away from the tactical discussion, which emphasizes the differences between us, and look at some of the underlying issues. For me, the only way we're going to make change is to accumulate power. And the only way we can accumulate power is to organize people. And the way, I think the discussions revealed that there are many different ways to organize people and many different issues to organize people around. But unless we can figure out ways to bring people together to act in their own self-interest, as this man just said, we don't have the ability to imagine the larger changes we want to bring about in society. There's a staircase to those changes that consists of empowering people, and you can only empower people. I mean, empowering people means giving them a sense of their own power. We have the power. The power is in everybody acting together in a unified way around a single strategy targeted to an objective that everybody wants to achieve and agrees they're going to work for. But we can't get to that level of unity, and we just revealed it in this discussion, until lots of different groups understand that there's a path to power. And the path to power is organizing, and organizing in a way that reveals to people that they already have power. They just don't realize it because they've never come together and expressed it. So our job as organizers is to help people express the power they already have. And through a number of experiences like that over a long period of time, we begin to develop a polity, a citizenry that understands that it can control the government if it wants to. It can make a new government if it wants to. It can set new relationships between the government and the other institutions in society and themselves. But you can't get there in one step. Because if you try to get there in one step, you not only trip over the tactical differences that have come out in this one discussion, and boy, if it was a larger group, the tactical differences would be magnified exponentially. So, I just want to emphasize we need to be about organizing people, and we need to organize them in a way that reveals to them that they already have power. Whatever mechanism is used to do that, whether it's a boycott or a ballot initiative or a march down the street or whatever, it has to be done with that kind of understanding. Let me say one other thing, and then I'm done. I'm worried that you guys on Wall Street are being asked to do more than you're capable of and more than you can do by the larger society. This society has been without organization and without the ability to question fundamentals about the economic system and the government system we live in. And you've helped the society understand that those fundamental questions need to be addressed. And now the society, which is used to playing a relatively passive role, is looking to you guys as saviors. Organize us. Tell us what to do. Tell us, what the next step is. What are you going to do this winter? What are you going to do next spring? We're looking to you for leadership. Well, you've been able to provide a certain level of leadership, which has been fantastic. You've blown everybody's minds in terms of, asking those fundamental questions and imagining fundamental alternatives. That's one role. Organizing America in the way that, uses the internet and communications and mass media and all, that's a different role. You know, it's like the difference between Martin Luther King and Saul Alinsky. You know, you don't ask Martin Luther King to go out and do neighborhood organizing. And you don't ask a guy like Saul Alinsky, who invented neighborhood organizing, to go out and give inspirational speeches the way Martin Luther King did. So, you know, we who are not in Occupy need to take more responsibility for doing some of the things that we've been talking about around this table, so that the burden of carrying the movement forward doesn't fall exclusively on you guys. And you know, I for one want to try to make that happen. But the advice I want to give you is power. Power comes from organizing people. And if organizing people will realize the power they already have, whether it's in a school district or a mortgage strike or whatever.
Quick responses?
Thank you.
Just wanted to say something, that's why I asked.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would have said was, instead of using the term organizing, bringing people together.
Fine.
Yeah, I like that new language, you know, I kept always saying